Sup nerds, I'm Tom.
I'm Wes.
Today we're doing some science.
So Search for Planet X is a puzzly deduction game where you are all trying to find this mysterious planet on, you've got all these different quadrants and you know the distribution of what's out there. You know, like in a lower player count, there's a dwarf planet and there's 4 asteroids and there's 2 comets and there's one planet that we're trying to find, and you have to figure out what's in every single zone, although that's most likely what's going to end up happening. But you want to find out where Planet X is and also what's adjacent to it on either side, because with astronomy it's not just it's there in the sky. You have to find your identifying points, and that's how you know where it is. So that's what you're trying to do.
I didn't know if that was a real astronomy thing. And actually, I probably should have, because in the rule book, there's little things in the bottom that say, inside the science, if the Planet 9 hypothesis is correct, the planet would have a mass of around 5 times that of the Earth. Shut up about the sun!
And the diameter of the sun is 870,000 miles, which makes it 109 times wider than the Earth, and 333,000 times heavier than the Earth.
Shut up about the sun! Shut up about the sun!
I'm going to pose a question to you, though, because I've been... So this is a very logic deduction game, right? Where you get bits of information and given that I know this, and I know this can't be near that, I can deduce that this is here. I feel like I have played another game similar to this that I don't think was app-driven. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But for the life of me, I can't think of that.
Clue? Was it Clue?
Shut up. But... if you know what I'm talking about, or if you've played another game that's very heavily, that's just straight up a deduction game, put it in the comments, because maybe it'll jog my memory, because, okay, I think it's Rising 5, actually. It might be.
I was thinking it might be Rising 5.
Because this is a mix between Rising 5 and nothing else. I don't know.
It takes, the Rising 5 idea and makes it, more.
It makes it co-op. Yeah, it's more, and it makes it co-op.
It's not co-op.
Rising 5 is co-op. Rising 5 is co-op. Right, it makes it competitive, right.
So the other thing about, and you kind of mentioned it, is this is a hybrid game that you have to have a smartphone or tablet or some kind of device at the table. I know for some people that's a deal breaker. It's almost better because that way people can't be playing on their phone if they have to use their phone in the game.
Another question for you. If it is a deal breaker for you, this hybrid game, is it A, because you are a purist and when you play a board game, you are playing a board game and you don't want electronics to be a part? Or is it B, you are worried about... if the app isn't supported or whatever, that eventually you'll have a game that you should be able to play but you can't, type of thing?
Or it's if you want to go camping and you don't have your phone, if you don't have your phone, you can't play. It's missing a component to the game.
Or D, something else. Or E, A, B, and C combined. Or...
regardless, it is very heavily app-based. It's not just the app is a part of the game.
I don't know the difference between the app is a part of the game, but the app is you know what I mean? It's not just that it's a part of the game, but it's a part of the game.
So my point is that you do more on the app than you do on the game board, I think.
Yes.
Almost, it seems, to me, it felt almost like they had an app game, and they were we could add a board to this and make it a board game. And you could play the whole thing on, I guess you could play almost every board game on just an app.
But this one fits so well to be a straight up.
You're doing most of your stuff in the app, and then you're marking your progress out here on the board.
This game is super easy to understand. I mean, we basically explained to you most of what it is. I mean, you're going to take actions in the app. Most of it is going to be is this thing in these areas? In quadrants 10 through 1, is there a comet? It'll say there are 2 comets there, or there's no comet there, or there's 1 comet there.
You have your notepad, you write that information down compared to the other information you have and say, okay, well, I know if there's 1 comet there and every comet is adjacent to a gas cloud and that's a gas cloud, one of these 2 things has to be the comet. But because I know that this thing is this over here, the comet has to be in spot 11.
Right. And it does have a bit of a time track aspect to where...
which I like a lot, actually.
Right. It's clever because it's not just take an action. It's actions have different amount of time. Whoever's furthest back on this circle
goes next.
Goes next. And it's you can take a small action that only costs 1 time. You can take a big action that costs 3 time. You can take, a bigger action that costs 4 time if you want to be more precise. But you may be jumping ahead of people and whatever. But what's really important to know is do not play this game first thing in the morning.
We were still like on our first cup of coffee, and it was a little bit like you need to wake up, do some jumping jacks, get the blood flowing, because again, it's a lot of logic and reasoning. It's not just like, I feel like I said Clue earlier, but Clue is a lot of just going around and getting information.
Guessing.
This is a lot of putting pieces of a puzzle together, and it does use actual logic and reasoning.
Yeah, it's like 90% deduction and strategy and efficiency. I think efficiency is a really good word. But it is like 10% or maybe even 5% luck, especially at the beginning, because you're just going to take a couple of stabs. You get a decent amount of information at the very beginning, or you could play hardcore mode where you get no clues, which seems just silly to me. But you'll get a decent amount of information, but it's not necessarily enough to go on. Your first, at least turn or two, you're going to have to take a couple of stabs. And hopefully those stabs will give you information to go off of.
You have to be smart with like the questions that you ask, because if you're all over the place and you're not like, all right, I'm going to focus down and figure out where the asteroids are. And once I know where the asteroids are, then I'm going to go for these rules about asteroids and like what's around asteroids. And if you're like, well, what about the asteroids? What about the dwarf planet? What about the gas cloud?
Yeah.
Then you're going to get a lot of information that doesn't tell you anything.
And also, like, in our early morning game, I did where I was like, okay, well, the visible... That's another thing, is that this little thing in the middle rotates, which is pretty cool. But there's only so many sections visible that you can actually take actions for. And I was like, okay, well, the visible sky is right here. I'll just go ahead and search for dwarf planets in this section right here. And it was like, there are no dwarf planets here. And I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I just did that. Because now all I'm going to do is cross off 1 dwarf planet. I looked at 6 sections, and had I been paying attention, I didn't even realize that I'd already crossed off dwarf planets on 5 of those sections. So all that did was help me with 1 section. Great.
I do and I don't like the visible sky thing. Like, thematically, it's great because it's, you can only look at the stars at night, because if not, the sun is too bright. And, this is a sun, and that's the Earth. And so, like, you can... It's a cool mechanic that way, or like thematic, but mechanically it was frustrating because you can only do things in the visible sky. But sometimes I'm like, I already know everything about this visible sky, or I know where planet X is, but it's not visible right now, so I need to wait until it's visible. And that, it frustrated me a little bit because I still won the game, but I figured out where planet X was first, and then I had to wait for it to be visible in the sky, and because we were waiting, Tom actually got to pick where it was. Like, he got to be the one to say it's here. And again, I still beat him. That's the most important thing to take away from this. But to me, it was a little bit almost punishing of like, I have to wait for nighttime so I can look for the planet. Which again...
Hey, remember Small World of Warcraft where I got like 50% more points than you did? Oh.
And if you're thinking like that logic and deduction and reasoning sounds great to me, I love that kind of thing. There's even an advanced mode you can play where instead of having 12 sectors, there's 18 sectors, and there's more dwarf planets and more empty stuff. And it doesn't necessarily make the game more difficult. It just means that you need to spend more time deducting, more time figuring out clues, and it just kind of like prolongs the game and makes you think longer. Which, for some people, that's going to be a positive because that's why they want to play the game.
Right, but for new players, especially people if you're not sure if they're going to like this type of thing, obviously start them off early on. And there also is different levels of difficulty depending on how many clues you get at the very beginning of the game. And not everybody needs to put in the same number of clues. You could have 0 clues and I could have a bunch of clues.
Yeah.
And also, like you said, none of those things, 12 sectors versus 18 sectors or the number of clues, is more mechanics. It's just more of the same. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I will say that it is something I'd recommend everybody download the app. You can play on just one device and pass it around. Not only is that annoying to have your phone going around the group, it is because there's so much like private information. It is nice just to be able to have your phone behind your player screen and doing your stuff where nobody else can see you.
But overall, I really liked this game. Now, granted, it is for a specific type of person. This logic deduction type thing isn't going to be for everybody. People who love Euro games or people who love, what do you call them, Ameritrash, you know? If you're big into playing D&D and Imperial Assault, I don't know, maybe this isn't something you're going to like. It's a very specific type of person who's going to enjoy this. And also, if somebody doesn't like it or doesn't get it at the table, I feel like there's like isn't really much the other players can do to help out. You know what I mean? Like especially in like a co-op game or a game where like you can see players' tableaus. If they're not getting it, you can be like, "Well, hang on. If you spend these resources, you can get that." But you can kind of walk them through
because it's all hidden. It's like I don't want you to know anything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, but if you are one of those people and you think this sounds awesome, you should definitely click on the purchase link down below. Get yourself a copy of The Search for Planet X.
Also, if you love awesome stuff, speaking of awesome and sauce, awesome sauce, in the description box down below, we're going to have a link for this awesome sauce game topper thing that we're playing on right here. Wow, it's so cool, Tom. I love it. It's amazing. How do I get one for myself? Link in the description box.
And if you want Tom to shut up, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.